Hello and welcome to Hope After. This is a Christ-centred journey towards healing in marriage and a space for couples walking through the impact of hidden pornography. And everything that we share here comes from lived experience because we've walked this road ourselves. What we offer has been shaped through the healing and rebuilding that God's led us through. And as scripture reminds us, God restores what's been broken, and we're called to walk with others as that restoration unfolds. So this isn't theory, it's truth lived out and shared carefully with you. It's a place where we speak honestly about the impact of pornography that it can have on the marriage, on trust, intimacy, faith, identity, and family life. But we do it with hope. Not shallow hope, not just forgive and move on hope, but the kind of hope that tells the truth, names the damage, makes room for grief, and believes that healing is still possible. Today I'm going to be talking directly to women about something that you may never say out loud, but you often carry very deeply. And that's, I don't look like those women. How can I compete with porn? That thought can feel humiliating. It can feel childish, even though it really isn't. And it can feel like jealousy, insecurity, comparison, shame, and grief all tangled together. For many wives, discovering pornography use doesn't just feel like discovering a behaviour that your husband has. It feels like discovering a whole world where other bodies, other images, other women, and other fantasies were invited into your marriage. And the question that rises up from that place can be devastating. Was I not enough? So today, I want to speak very carefully and very honestly into that. Because if this is where you are, I want to say from the start, you were never meant to compete with pornography. And his use of porn is not evidence that you failed as a woman, as a wife, or as a sexual partner. When a wife discovers pornography in her marriage, one of the first wounds is often comparison. She may begin comparing her body, her age, her shape, her hair, her confidence, her sexuality, how she is in the bedroom, her past, her personality, even her value. She may find herself asking painful questions. Were they thinner than me? Were they younger than me? More exciting or confident? Were they more desirable? And sometimes the pain becomes even more specific. What type of woman was he watching? Did they look like me? Were they the opposite of me? Was this what he really wanted all along? Was he imagining them when he was with me? Has my body ever been enough for him? Now, those questions aren't vanity, and they're not dramatic, overacting. They are the mind trying to make sense of betrayal, because pornography doesn't remain neatly in a private box. It spills into the wife's sense of safety. It enters the bedroom. It enters the mirror. It enters getting dressed in the morning. It enters aging and menopause and intimacy and photographs and silence. A woman may suddenly feel watched, compared, exposed, and rejected, even when no one is saying anything. And this is why the phrase, "oh, just don't compare yourself," often feels so useless, because comparison is not the root issue. The root issue is something outside the marriage was given access to a place that should have been protected. I think one of the hardest things is that a wife can know logically that porn is fake, edited, staged, exaggerated, and still feel absolutely crushed by it. Because the wound is not just he looked at an image, it's he chose something that made me feel replaced. And I think men can miss that. They can minimize it by saying it didn't mean anything. But to the wife, it can feel like it meant everything. And when a man says, but it wasn't about you, that might be partially true in terms of the addiction or the behaviour, but it doesn't remove the impact. And that cannot be used as a shortcut to avoid responsibility. It wasn't about you should never mean, so you shouldn't be hurt. It's really important because many women are left feeling that they have to be understanding before they even have been allowed to grieve. Porn is not a fair comparison. It creates an impossible and dishonest comparison. It presents bodies without real lives attached to them. No tiredness, no vulnerability, no ordinary marriage, no menopause, no bills, no children knocking on the door, no aging, no emotional responsibility or mutual care, no covenant, no sacrifice, no love. It offers simply performance without relationship. That matters because a real wife is not an image. She is a person. She has a heart, a history, a body that has lived, changed, and carried stress, carried grief, carried children perhaps, carried responsibility, carried years. Pornography strips women of personhood and turns them into fragments, a body part, a scene, a fantasy, a quick escape, a chemical hit. So when a wife asks, how can I compete with that? The answer is, you can't compete with it because it's not playing by the rules of reality. But more than that, you should never have been placed in competition with it. Marriage was never designed to be wife versus porn. It was designed to be husband and wife together, with anything that harms love, trust, faithfulness kept outside the door. But he chose it. This is where we have to be honest, because some wives may hear porn is fake and think, yes, but he still chose it. And that is a valid pain. It's not comforting to be told that porn is unrealistic when your husband still gave it his attention, his desire and secrecy and time or sexual energy. So let's not minimize that. He did choose it. That choice caused harm. That choice needs to be owned. And if there has been secrecy, lying, hiding, minimizing, gaslighting even, blame shifting or repeated broken promises, then the wound is deeper still. A wife doesn't heal because her husband says it was only porn. She begins to heal when truth is told, responsibility is taken, safety is rebuilt, and her pain is treated as real. At the same time, his choice of porn doesn't mean you are lacking. That is the lie many wives absorb. The mind tries to find a reason. If I were prettier, he wouldn't have done it. If I were more available, he wouldn't have needed it. If I was more sexual, he wouldn't have gone elsewhere. If I looked different, maybe he would want me properly. But that puts the burden in the wrong place. His porn use is not a report card on your body. It's not a measure of your desirability. It's not a verdict on your femininity. And it's not proof that you are not enough. I think one of the hardest things for a husband to understand is that he may say it had nothing to do with how you looked and expect that to settle the whole thing. But it doesn't settle it because the wife is left living with the images in her mind. She may not have seen what he saw, but her imagination fills in the gaps. Sometimes the imagination is worse because she creates a whole story about what he wanted, what he preferred, and what she wasn't. And sometimes the imagination is worse because you end up creating a whole story about what he wanted, what he preferred, and what you're not. And if he becomes defensive at that point, you end up carrying the wound alone. The husband has to be willing to hear your pain without rushing to protect himself from guilt. The work isn't just your husband stopping the behaviour, but also about him becoming safe enough to hear what the behaviour did. Pornography can change the way a woman sees herself. It did to me. Before discovery, I had normal insecurities. Most of us do. But after discovery, the mirror became a place of accusation. My body just felt wrong. My aging felt threatening. My clothes felt pointless. And my sexuality, I just didn't know who I was. I needed reassurance. And then when he gave me reassurance, I struggled to believe it. A compliment sounded hollow. Whenever he told me that I looked beautiful inside, I would say, then why did you need them? And that's one of the cruelest effects of betrayal. It can make you suspicious of love, suspicious of desire, of kindness, suspicious of any moment that you used to feel intimate. That's not because you're weak. It's because the trust has been injured. When the person who should have protected the marriage has secretly opened a door to something else, your nervous system may no longer know what's safe. So healing is not just about information. It's about rebuilding safety slowly enough so that your body can begin to believe it. If you're listening and you feel less than, I want to speak directly to you. You're not less beautiful because he looked at pornography. You're not less desirable because he used fantasy. You're certainly not less worthy because he hid something. You're not less feminine because your body is real. You're not less valuable because you've aged, changed, struggled, carried weight, lost confidence, felt tired, or not wanted sex in the middle of the pain. You're a whole person. Pornography trains people to consume. Marriage calls people to love. Those are not the same thing. And if your husband has consumed images, that doesn't mean you're now an object in a lineup waiting to be ranked. You're not competing for a score. You're not auditioning for your own marriage. You're not required to become more like porn in order to be loved faithfully. A healed marriage doesn't ask the wife to become a better fantasy. It asks the husband to become a safer man. Now, although this episode is directed at wives, I know that the husbands will listen. And this bit may be uncomfortable, but it matters. Your wife may not only be hurt by what you did. She may now be haunted by what she thinks it says about her. So reassurance needs to go deeper than "you're beautiful, darling." That may be kind, but it's not enough on its own. She is going to need you to understand the comparison wound. She needs you to hear that her body image has been shaken. She may need you to stop expecting quick sexual confidence from a woman who now feels sexually unsafe and awkward. She may need you to answer questions without irritation. She's going to need you to grieve with her over what pornography has stolen. And she may need you to stop saying, "I've said sorry, what else can I do?" And you might have to start asking, "What has this been like for you?" She will need consistency over time, not big emotional speeches that fade after 3 days, not promises made in panic, not defensiveness once the initial crisis has passed. She needs evidence of change, real accountability, honesty without being cornered, devices and habits brought into the light, a willingness to seek help, a commitment to rebuilding trust slowly, patience when she's triggered, because she will be, often, tenderness when she feels exposed, and humility when she asks the same question again and again, because her repeated questions may not mean she's trying to punish you. They may mean her mind is still trying to find solid ground. Now, there's something also very painful when a wife is expected to be sexually available again before she feels emotionally safe. And I think some men see intimacy as the proof that things are getting better. But for the wife, intimacy without safety can feel like another violation. It's really important because the wife may want closeness, but also feel frightened of it. She may want reassurance, but she might not want to be touched. She may love her husband deeply, but feel repelled by what has happened. And that confusion needs compassion, not pressure. So the goal can't be, how do we get back to sex as quickly as possible? The goal has to be, how do we rebuild safety, honesty, and trust? For Christian couples, there can be another layer. A wife may wonder why God didn't protect her from this pain. She may feel ashamed to bring the details to him. She may feel angry, abandoned, exposed, or spiritually confused. She may also hear unhelpful Christian responses. Just forgive him. All men struggle. Don't deprive your husband. At least he didn't have an affair. You need to pray more. Those responses can deepen the wound. Forgiveness matters, but forgiveness is not the same as pretending there's been no damage. Grace matters, but grace is not the same as removing consequences. Marriage matters, but marriage is not protected by silence, it's protected by truth. In Scripture, God is not casual about betrayal. He is close to the brokenhearted. He cares about what's done in secret. He calls people out of the darkness into the light. So if you're the wife, you do not need to minimize your pain to be a good Christian. And if you're the husband, confession is not just saying enough to stop the crisis. It is stepping into truth because you want to become clean, honest, and safe before God and before your wife. So what do we do with the comparison? Because I can tell you, it doesn't disappear overnight. You are going to be triggered by certain bodies, films, adverts, social media, going to the beach, going to the gym, changing rooms, or just your husband simply looking in a particular direction. That doesn't mean you're failing to heal. It means your brain is trying to protect you from being blindsided again. But over time, comparison needs gentle challenge, not harshly, not with shame, but with truth. When the thought comes, I don't look like those women, you might begin to answer, I was never meant to. I'm a person, not a performance. My body is not the cause of his choices. Porn is not the measure of beauty. I do not need to compete with something that dehumanizes women. Faithful love does not require me to become a fantasy. My worth is not decided by his brokenness. Those truths may feel too big at first, so start small. You may not be ready to love your body. You may simply begin by refusing to hate it because of what someone else chose. That too is healing. So what can rebuilding look like? Well, after pornography, it's not about pretending that you are suddenly confident again. It's not about pushing yourself to move on. And it's not about your husband demanding trust because he's stopped using. It's not even only about stopping porn, although that matters deeply. Rebuilding means creating a different marriage from the one that allowed secrecy to survive. A marriage where truth is not dragged out reluctantly. A marriage where your pain is not treated as the problem. A marriage where your husband's recovery is not dependent on you pleasing him. A marriage where accountability exists away from you. So you're not forced into the role of detective, mother, probation officer, or therapist. A marriage where intimacy is rebuilt with consent, tenderness, patience, and emotional safety. A marriage where both people can tell the truth, but the responsibility for the betrayal stays where it belongs. This is why healing needs structure, because without structure, many couples simply circle the same conversations. He says sorry, she asks questions. He feels ashamed, she feels unsafe, he becomes defensive, she feels even more alone. They both get exhausted. A pathway gives the pain somewhere to go. So if you find yourself saying, I can't compete with porn, your husband mustn't respond with annoyance. Let him listen to this episode. Explain to him he mustn't say, you're making too much of this, or I told you it wasn't about you, or that was ages ago. He mustn't say, I can't keep going over this. Instead, you need to be listening out for things like, I hate that my choices have made you feel that way. You should never have been placed in comparison with porn. I know saying you're beautiful doesn't undo the damage. I want to understand what this has done and how you see yourself. I'm committed to becoming safe, not just hoping that you feel better. I'm not going to pressure you to heal faster than you can. Those words only matter if they're backed by behaviour, but words can still help create safety when they're honest, humble, and consistent. You may not feel beautiful right now. You may not feel wanted. You may not feel safe. You may not feel like yourself, and you may not know what you want your marriage to become. That's okay. You don't have to solve everything today. You don't have to decide the whole future of your marriage in one exhausted conversation. Please don't force intimacy to prove that you're healing. You don't have to hate your body because pornography entered your story. For now, perhaps the first step is simply this: refuse to carry the blame that doesn't belong to you. His choices are his responsibility. Your healing matters. Your body deserves kindness. Your heart deserves truth. Your marriage, if it is to be rebuilt, must be rebuilt in reality, not denial, not pressure, not performance. In reality and truth. I know your husband will want you to believe him immediately when he says, "You are enough, darling." But the problem is his behaviour has already told you a different story. And that's why words alone don't repair. You need to see that he's no longer defending the thing that hurt you and no longer protecting himself from the consequences of it. Recovery can't be, "I've stopped, so now you need to be okay." It has to be, "I'm willing to walk through the damage with you." That is where hope begins to feel real, not when the pain is rushed away or ignored, but when it's finally taken seriously. This is exactly why we created Hope After, because couples need more than panic conversations. They need a way to slow down, tell the truth, stabilise the ground, understand the wound, begin individual healing, rebuild trust carefully, and think about long-term recovery. The Hope After pathway is not about blaming the wife. It's not about excusing the husband. It's not about rushing forgiveness or forcing intimacy. It's a guided process for couples who want to face the reality of pornography's impact on their marriage and begin walking toward healing with honesty, faith, and structure. The 6 stages are stage 1, the moment everything changed, which is about naming what happened and beginning to understand the shock. Stage 2 is stabilising the ground, creating safety, reducing chaos, and putting basic support and accountability in place. Stage 3 is naming the wound, understanding betrayal trauma, comparison, secrecy, broken trust, and the deeper impact. Stage 4, individual healing, recognising that both people have work to do, but the responsibility for the pornography use stays with the person who chose it. Stage 5 is rebuilding trust, looking at honesty, consistency, repair, intimacy, communication, and what trust actually requires. And stage 6 is about long-term recovery, building a marriage that doesn't simply go quiet again, but learns to live in truth, accountability, and hope. If today's episode has touched something painful for you, please know this. You're not silly for struggling with comparison. You're not vain for grieving what this has done to your body image. You're not unspiritual because you cannot simply get over it, and you're not beyond hope. So let's return to the title. I don't look like those women. How can I compete with porn? The answer is, you were never meant to compete with porn. Pornography is not your rival because you lost. It's an intruder because it should never have been there. And healing, it doesn't come from becoming more like the fantasy. Healing begins when truth enters the room. Responsibility is taken, safety is rebuilt, and your worth is no longer measured against something that was never worthy of comparison. You're not an image, you're not a performance. You're not a body to be ranked. You're a whole person, loved by God, worthy of dignity, truth, tenderness, and care. And if your marriage is going to heal, it must make room for all of that. Thank you for listening to Hope After. If you'd like to explore the Hope After pathway, you can find the details through the link in the show notes. Take this gently. There is hope after discovery. There's hope after devastation. There's hope after pornography has entered the marriage. But that hope begins with truth, and you are allowed to begin there.